If you're not happy with where you're at in life, if you don't change something, then you're going to continue to stay in the place that you don't want to be. It's time to make the choice to rise up as a king and strip away all the things that would cause you and keep you held in the chains of the past, chains and fear, chains and depression, chains and addiction. It's time to strip those things away, rise up as a king unto the King of Kings. That is the topic that we are talking about today in this episode. All right, guys, welcome to another episode of King's Code Radio. We are a movement of men rising up as kings, kings unto the King of Kings, and really rising to the occasion and ruling and reigning in life as a king in the realm of business and finances, in our faith and our walk with God, in our family and in our marriage, in our health even. And today I want to kind of just dive in and kind of share my heart on a couple things. I believe that a lot of men get into a place for many, many different reasons, but they get into a place where the concept of rising up as a king and being a king and ruling and reigning in life is such a bizarre thought and concept that they just don't even consider it. And what I have found often is due to whether it's how you were raised, and the examples that you had growing up, and also the things that you were exposed to. Those things will form belief systems, and those belief systems basically determine your behavior, your belief system, your thought process, and how you behave, how you think, the decisions that you make. And unfortunately, a lot of those decisions that we make that are really not the right decisions to be making, they will slowly start to just continue to desensitize us, where what would be normal or true suddenly is not. And we kind of come up with our own truth that is contrary to the real truth, which it comes from the Word of God. Now, with that being said, there's a number of different snares and things that men fall into. But I found that whether we're talking about addictions, whether we're talking about hurts and pains and rejections, or just a lousy example of what a man is supposed to be, regardless, the things that we get caught into, whether it's drugs, whether it's porn, whether it's it could be something as even just an addiction of feeding yourself in the sense of going to the gym too much. It could be social media. It's anything that we are putting above God to zone out, tune out, and numb ourselves. And we want to do those things as men to avoid the pain and dealing with the reality of the truth that we are not rising up as kings. We would rather numb ourselves than deal with the pain that we may have to face to address our marriage or our kids. Or we would rather numb ourselves and almost do destructive things than maybe deal with the financial pressures that we are feeling in our work, in our business, and so forth. And it's easier to get comfortable and find ourselves in a place where we can go to a church that does not challenge us to grow in the Lord, and we're basically lying to ourselves at that point in time, saying, oh, you know what, I've done my duty, I've gone to church, and now I'm good. When in reality, if you're not growing and moving forward with the Lord, then you're probably going backwards. But the problem is with all these things, there are these snares in life that keep us from rising above those things and making the choice and saying, you know what, I'm not doing those things anymore. Now, there are so many different directions we could go today. And again, I just kind of want to share my heart today. I'm not going off of any notes or anything like that. I just want to share my heart. And that really is why we're doing what we're doing inside of the King's Code, and why we are a movement of men that are rising up and being the kings that God has called us to be. I had the opportunity to speak to a group of men last night, and we actually covered one of the foundational Bible verses that we talk about in Romans 5, talking about reigning in life as a king and so forth. And, we had a really good conversation as far as yielding to grace and the grace that God has given, and walking in grace by faith, and doing these things that God has called us to do. But when you're in that beginning phase of what is, this, you're faced with this concept of rising up as a king, what do you do? What do you do with that? Maybe you're intrigued by that idea, but still think, no, this is a bunch of crap, or no, this is too good to be true, or no, I'll never be able to get there. And really, I want to challenge that. If you are thinking anything or anything remotely close to that, I want to challenge you. Is that opinion that you just formed about, and that opinion formed to justify why you would not rise up as a king and rule and reign in life as a king. That opinion that came up to try to justify why you wouldn't, I want to challenge you and say, then where are you basing that opinion out of? Your own belief systems, your own experiences, your own trying to hide from the truth. Because if you line it up with truth, and I'm talking about not somebody's truth, not this is my truth. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the truth that is founded in the Word of God. Because as far as I'm concerned, that's the only truth I want. And so when it comes to all of that, we have to come to a place of realizing my belief system, my belief structure is jacked up. It might be easier to relate to more of what we call poverty mentality than a kingdom mentality. And I guess a great example that can be found in the Bible is the prodigal son. When that prodigal son had spent all the inheritance and done all the stupid stuff and all the things that a lot of men turn to because the world tells us it's fun and that's the way that a successful person should be. When he was faced with the reality, sitting in mud, eating the leftovers of the pigs, and he's like, well, maybe I'll just go back to my dad's house and be a servant there, And you know the story, how the dad welcomed him with open arms and put him a robe on him and gave him a ring and threw a party and all these things, right? And I think there's a parallel there with a lot of what we face today is we find ourselves in the mud and the mire and the pigs, and we justify why it's okay to be there, why it's okay not to address that fact. Maybe it's condemnation, maybe it's guilt and shame, maybe it's just being worn out and stressed out, but we try to justify why it's okay to live in the mud when God has made a way to not live in that anymore. He has opened up the jail cell. He opened up the door and said, come on out. And sometimes we try because it's comfortable. We've gotten used to it. We've been desensitized to where that is normal. And so if that is a place that you find yourself in, there's a few things that you can do right here, right now, while you even listen to this podcast. And that is, first and foremost, recognize the fact. This is your reality check. It's a reality check to yourself of realizing, is even in that story of the prodigal son, he came to himself. He suddenly had this moment and this thought of clarity saying, you know what? I'm willing to recognize I'm not where I'm supposed to be. I'm willing to recognize that I am not... I've been deceived and I've deceived myself and I've lied to myself. This whole thing was a massive mistake. And he had his own reality check. And so that really is the first step. Have your own reality check. Have you been deceiving yourself? Have you been believing lies? Have you been basing your decisions off of a belief system that is error, that's full of error, that's full of false truths? It's blended in maybe with some truth, but it's still not complete truth. The second thing is you have to be able to be honest. When that reality check happens, you have to be honest with God and say, you know what? I know you've made a way, and I know I've royally screwed things up again and again. I know it's more natural for me to run to these other things, these other snares, these other traps, these other pits that we fall into. It's easier to do those things and face the truth. But you come to a place where you have to run to the Lord. You have to run to Him and allow Him to repair and restore and just love on you. And then it comes time to say, I will rise up as a king and I will strip this mud off of me and I will accept that robe of righteousness and I will rise up as a king unto the King of Kings. I will rise up and I will say no to those things and I will learn the skills and I will I will learn the truths and the precepts and the concepts of what it means to actually rise up as a king and then rule my realm, rule in the 4 quadrants that we talk about within the King's Code, which is your faith quadrant, your marriage and family quadrant, your business and finance quadrant, and your health quadrant. You're going to start ruling and reigning in those areas. And it's important when you've made this choice, and that's why the King's Code is here and available to you, is that you can be surrounded by other men. Not only are you getting the tools and the resources and the training that you need, but you're also surrounded by other men that are going through it just like you. And so I really want to encourage you guys and invite you guys, take the very, very first step and join us on Facebook. Join us on Instagram. We just launched a brand new Facebook group called the King's Code Arsenal. And this arsenal, this group is going to be full of different trainings. We're going to be doing live trainings. In fact, we're going to be doing one in the business quadrant next week on personal branding and so forth. It's one of those things where you got to have the tools, but you're also surrounded by the men that are going through it, that are going to encourage you to say, you know what, I'm rising up, you're rising up, and we're doing this thing. I know it's not always easy. I know it can be hard, and you're going to be tempted to go back to the mud. You're going to go back or be tempted to go back to the things that desensitize, the things that numb. It'd be tempting to go back and get Novocaine'd up, where you're just numb and you don't have to feel it for a little while. But that's not what we're doing. So that's the first step. Go to the Facebook group. Join us on Instagram. It is, if you're on Facebook right now, if you're on Instagram right now, go search King's Code or King's Code Movement. You will find us, all right? And join the group where you can start getting surrounded by guys just like you and guys that are further along, that have risen, and get the training that you need. I'm excited about the different coaches that we're accumulating inside of the King's Code. Coaches that are experts in these different areas of life. And I know when everything hit the fan for me a number of years ago, when the Lord really showed me this King's Code map that we've talked about inside the King's Code. And if you're not familiar with it, I do encourage you to check out kingscodechallenge.com. That is a challenge that will walk you through a number of things that I learned the hard way, but now am showing men just like you. And so when everything hit the fan and I had to win my marriage back and I needed to do a bunch of different things, I realized that so often life does not have, or I guess I shouldn't say life, a lot of churches, a lot of resources, a lot of Bible books, things of that nature, still don't equip men to rise up as kings. But inside King's Code, that's exactly what we're going to do. So if you have found yourself in one of these snares, caught in one of these snares, and you don't know how to get out, and your identity is in these things, and maybe you feel like you are an addict, maybe you do feel like you are a failure, maybe you do feel like you're a lousy dad or a lousy husband, and maybe you've messed up too many times, and maybe you're on marriage number 4 and you're still messing that one up. Well, I'm saying it does not matter the current situation that you find yourself in. God's not done. God is not done yet. And so it is not too late to rise up and be the king that God has put you on this earth to be, and rule and reign in your sphere of influence upon this earth. So if that resonates with you, please join us. You can join us on Facebook, Instagram. Check us out, kingscodechallenge.com. And you can also find us at our main hub, which is kingscode.org. Guys, I want to just tell you, and I can't stress this enough, it's not too late to rise up and be the king that God has called you to be. Until next time, guys, God bless, and we'll see you in the next episode.